Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you how to smoke some ribs using the 3-2-1 method. So let's stay tuned. Alright, so here I have some St. Louis style pork spare ribs. We've picked these up at the market. Not exactly the best ones. I would have waited till I could find them on sale for like $1.80 a pound, but for me and her, this is plenty. So go through the prep of this. You can use this method with any smoker. I'm going to be using a Traeger pellet smoker, but you could use a different brand or even propane smoker as well. So I'll set this down and see if we can get the right angle here. All right, so first step, open up your ribs. I usually like to rinse them off, just get some of that bacteria, anything that was fats, oils, blood from the factory, from the factory. The second thing is, which a lot of people commonly don't do, especially if they grill them or cook them in the oven, which I didn't learn until recently. So on this, see if you guys can see this, but there's actually right here on the back side where the bone side, there's a thin membrane. It's not all of it. Once you get it off, you'll still see a little bit, which is kind of what will hold the bones in. But if you don't, failure to take this off, and if you don't take it off, the smoke and flavor just won't really absorb through this membrane. So on the back side, you'll get a area that really you just can't smoke. But so I usually start with a fork or a knife and try and pry up a section, just enough to kind of get my finger under. Second, as I take a paper towel, it makes it a lot easier to grip, and and then start to kind of rip it off. Sometimes, like there, it may tear a few times. You might not get it in one pull. Might have to work on it a little bit, but yeah, just start from one end, go to the other. Again, you can see, it's like a fatty membrane, but there's still, so get this off here. So I'll start with my fork again. Sometimes I think some butchers, if you buy these from the butcher shop directly, may do this already, but most of the ones that come prepackaged don't. And so, alright, so that's majority of it off. I mean, if you don't get every last bit, it's not going to be the end of the world. So the second thing I like to do, which for this I'm gonna, is trim it up. This flap of meat, while it's meat, just isn't going to cook very even on there. I'll also take this flap off. And then look too, if there's any, sometimes kind of like this flap, there could be a huge flap of fat, and you'll want to cut that off too. Like this section of fat I'll leave, it'll give it some flavor, and most of that will shrink off. So now while I'm doing this, my smoker's actually temperature's preset and warming up to 180. So the 3-2-1 method basically is 3 hours, 180 degrees smoking, and then you'll turn it up to 225, smoking another 2 hours wrapped in tin foil, and then the last hour you'll unfoil it, and you can put sauce or whatever if you're gonna add anything to it to the final stage, you can do that. But all right, so then the last thing that I do, just a prep here. put a little bit of oil on it, just to make sure the rub will stick. And at this point, I'll cover it up in a rub before I throw it on. And so for the rub, I'm going to use is this Kosmos Dry Rub. It's a honey killer bee. It's got a nice sweet flavor, but yeah, I'll cover this thing up pretty good. And again, do both sides. Now that that membrane is off, this stuff will actually be able to absorb in a little bit, get the flavor into the meat. Yeah, looks good. Alright guys, so I will put this on a pan and throw it on the smoker. Alright guys, down here from my garage, got my smoker going. So this is the Renegade Pro by Traeger. I'll probably actually get something a little bigger at some point, but I mean, for me, has plenty of room. I could smoke almost probably close to 4 racks. I did 3 full chickens a couple weeks ago, so there's plenty of room for just me and my wife. If I have friends or anybody over, you know, plenty of room to kind of smoke things. So let's see. Yeah, turn this back down to 180 for the initial, 3-hour smoke session. I'm using Traeger's signature blend pellets. So it's a little bit of, I think, everything. It's got hickory, I don't know, a couple other. I know hickory's one of the main ones in here. And then for a lot of people, if you don't know, so this is the drip pan in here. I actually wrap it in tin foil. This just makes cleanup a lot easier. You know, every few times you use it, you can swap out the tin foil and you don't have to worry about scrubbing it or anything. It just peels off. Same thing with, vacuuming out the dust. But yeah, overall, pretty happy with this. I got this. This was I want to say Black Friday or Cyber Monday sale, and there was some issues with it. So like this knob here was broke, and then it showed up late, and so I just complained to Amazon each time and ended up paying like $100 for this thing. It's like a, I think $450 or $500 smoker, maybe more than that. I can't remember, but I love it. My father's got a Rectech, huge one, and that thing definitely is a little better than this. It's got, I mean, I know a lot of the Traegers, newer ones have the electronic controls and Wi-Fi enabled on your phone. This one's pretty basic, but it gets the job done. I don't need anything fancy, but so just set that on there. I'm gonna go ahead inside and set the timer and continue from there. Guys, gonna set the timer here for 3 hours. This Thermal Pro sensor probe is good. Has a timer mode, so I'll just set this, leave it on the counter, but it also has a probe, wireless probe, and I believe there's a higher model that gives you 2 probes that you can put in and monitor things wirelessly. Again, the Traeger, it has probes on it, but you have to go out and look. So for those long smokes, it's handy to have something like this that I can just literally bring it inside and check every half hour, 30 45 minutes. So all right, we'll let this run for 3 hours, and I'll show you the next process. All right guys, this thing's cranking along here, so we're at the 3-hour part. So give you an idea of what it looks like. Gonna take this thing off and we'll begin to wrap it. All right guys, now we are going to wrap the ribs. Wrap it. I use tin foil. You could use butcher paper too, so kind of use 3 sheets and layer them so that you'll be able to fold them in and contain all the juices. So you put your ribs on it. For me, I mean, at this point, it really comes down to personal preference, and the more you do it, the more you can see what works for you. If you like, I like to sprinkle a little bit of brown sugar on it to give it, a little sweet taste. So, pour a little of that on. Also like to put some honey. And then finally, sometimes I use like Jack Daniels, some different liquors, but you want to put something in here that's going to help keep it moist during this process. And this is, when we put it back on, we're going to put it at 225 and for 2 hours now. But so I'm going to use some Pabst Blue, just because I want to kind of more of a neutral taste. My wife, she's not a big fan when I use the Jack, because you can taste it and it's pretty strong. But you want to pour enough of it on here where it's it pulls up, and then that middle sheet, like I said, it's kind of the one that you want, and you want to fold it and wrap everything tight, because this needs to be almost airtight. So wrap it. You don't want the steam from boiling, whatever you put on, whether it's Jack, water, orange juice, apple juice. There's all different kinds, but you don't want that. You don't want that liquid to boil and then evaporate and just kind of seep out, and then eventually it will dry out the meat because there will be no liquid here. This locks in the moisture, so basically you turn it up and it cooks it at a higher temperature, and the liquids and everything just get into the meat. And basically when this is done, you should see the meat will actually shrink around the bones, and depending on how long you cook it and how moist, you might actually see some of the bones may get to the point where you could almost just pull them out or they fall out. All right, here we go. So we have the wrap ribs in here. Again, you can do more than one rack at a time when you're smoking. I mean, it doesn't really make much of a difference if you're smoking one rack or 4. It's still going to take the same amount of time. Going to burn through the same amount of pellets for the most part. And so we'll just put this in, we'll close it down, and now we will set our timer for back. So our 2 hours is up. Brought it in off the smoker. Alright, so what you're going to need to do now is kind of reopen it back up. Remember, it's going to be filled with hot liquid, so I usually like to drain it over by the sink to get a lot of that liquid in there. And if I take this, give you guys a little close up so you can see here, this is the back side. You can see the bones, the meat has shrunk back off the bones. It smells amazing. But now depending on what you use for rub and what you actually put on it, the meat at this point is going to be pretty tender, and don't be surprised if the bones can actually pull right out. Let's see. Throw that in the sink, but for me, I mean, yeah, there's one bone was able, that's how tender it is. Was able just to pull it out. So now, the last hour, we're going to put it back on, and it's just to kind of finish cooking the meat, and then the last 15 or 20 minutes, depending on your preference, you can put some barbecue sauce on it and get some extra flavor on it. So yeah, let's put it back on. go. All right, guys, there's the meat. There's the meat, so we're putting it on now for the final 1 hour. And then we can put a little sauce on it. I'll show you the final product. We brought the rack in here, letting it rest for a few minutes before I end up cutting it up, and I'll kind of show you the smoke ring and inside the meat and see how that came out. But overall, pretty good so far. I mean, very tender. I know picking it up, one of these bones up through here actually popped up just trying to carry it out, so should be pretty tender. You know, one thing, if you follow anything with grilling and smoking in competitions, this would actually fail because the meat will actually be too tender. It needs to be able to stick to the bone still, and so they usually don't smoke them as long. But for our use, the 3-2-1 method, I mean, it works great. You don't really have to pay attention to it. You just set your timers and you are good to go. So I'll let this rest, and then I'll cut in and show you the final product. All right, and here it's cut up. You can see, I mean, it was so tender just cutting it off. Here's the piece that the bone popped out, and it literally ripped right off. But if this will focus, you can kind of see the pink ring of smoke on the inside, and yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So if you have any questions, post them in the comments. Make sure to subscribe and like, and check out for new videos. Thanks, guys, and catch you later. So good. Ball right.